Lorraine, we're gonna start. Can you introduce our guest?
Oh, yes, sorry, I
and
apologize.
before and let me give you our official People Before Politics round of applause. Welcoming you to the show, first time show on the show.
Okay, gentleman, we have with us today is Mr. Robert Prisco, who is running for Westchester County Judge.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you
Welcome
very
to
much.
the show. Who won the primary along with Judge Melissa Lowe.
He is on the palm card that
what
Tasha
Tasha-
and Elena are in.
Okay,
Let
that's
me
a beautiful.
yeah,
That's a
just-
beautiful
just
thing.
Let me show it to everybody.
So,
do my thing.
what now is 2 seats? What is it? Is it 4 candidates? Is it?
There are 2 seats open. There are 2 on the Democratic line, myself and Melissa.
Right.
There's 1 on the Republican line, that's
Right.
Chris McClure.
Right.
And then there's another candidate on the working family line.
Right, okay.
And that's Mike Terwell.
Right. There's 4, so it's 4.
Right.
Okay, right. But there are only 2 seats though.
Correct.
And y'all are the 2 that won the Democratic primary.
Right.
Why should for people getting to know you for the first time, why should they pull the lever for you on November 5th?
Okay. I would say the most important reason is because of my experience and my devotion to public service. I was employed by the Westchester County District Attorney's Office for 32 and a half years. All I have practiced is criminal law. For those who aren't aware, the county court is responsible for handling felony criminal matters. If a felony criminal case is going to be disposed of either by way of plea or by trial, it's going to take place in the county court. So that's why experience matters. And with my 32 years of experience just doing criminal law, I think I'm very well suited for that position.
That's good. I was saying, I don't know if you heard me earlier, the reason we had more judicial candidates on in the last 2 years, especially for the black and brown community, those are some of the most important elections we, about how, the criminal justice system, as far as they're concerned, Westchester DA, county judges, and your city court judges. And so this year and last year, we've tried to have, in the last couple of years, we've tried to have more judges on because most people in our community don't get to interact with the judges, and then y'all elected, and what is the term, 10 years?
10 years for county.
It's 10 years, and then we don't know nothing about you.
Right.
So this is the opportunity, but I know there are certain things y'all can't speak on. So who is Robert Prisco, not the candidate, the person?
Okay, Robert Prisco, the person.
And pull the mic closer to you so everybody hear you.
Okay, Robert Prisco, the person, is a happily married father of 4. I have 4 children, ages 24, 22, 9, and 7, just like I planned it.
Oh, how awesome is that?
I currently live in the town of Greenburgh. I grew up in the town of Eastchester. And as far as what I do in my off time, I coach youth sports. I coach both soccer, baseball, and basketball. And I went to the Eastchester public school system. After I graduated Eastchester High School, I went to Villanova University. I received my economics degree from Villanova University. And then I went to Albany Law School, graduated Albany Law School, and immediately went to work with the Westchester County District Attorney's Office, where, as I said, I was an assistant DA for 32 and a half years.
Okay. Lorraine, I know you got questions.
Yo, I'm just looking at his picture up there and the thing. Yo, he looks a little bit like Richard Gere. No, seriously, I'm freaking out right now. Anyway, it's good to have you. It's
Thank
good to
you,
have you.
And happy birthday.
Thank you. I know when you was running the primary, we don't endorse in Black Westchester, but I definitely supported you and was very vocal about it, and I'm glad that you won the primary.
Thank
and
you.
I hope everything very successful from here on out.
Actually,
But let me tell you something. I traveled all over the county. Whoever's putting up your signs is doing one heck of a job.
That would.
Your stuff is out there.
Thank you. That would be me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For the primary, myself and my younger daughter were putting up most of the signs, but I am getting a lot of help from other people now, and it's very, very helpful, and it gets your name out there. You know, AJ, as you just said, the public doesn't know anything about judges unless they've been in a courtroom and actually watched.
That's usually your first interaction with
100%.
a judge, especially for the minority community.
Right.
Is when you or a family member, you're watching a family member before a judge.
Either as a victim or as an accused or jury duty. That's about it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and unfortunately, as you also alluded to, we're not allowed to give our positions on particular issues or subject matters that I know the community would like to hear our positions on. There are ethical rules in place that prevent us from doing so because they don't want us to have a preconceived notion of something, because we may hear that type of case while we're sitting on the bench. So I understand the rule, but I also understand that the public may feel gypped that they can't really get to know us before Election Day, and that's unfortunate. It really is. Other politicians, non-judicial politicians, can give their positions and their feelings and their thoughts on particular issues. We're not allowed to, and it's a disservice to the public, because I would really like the public to know how I feel about certain issues.
And you know, and that's the challenge with interviewing y'all, because
Some questions you can't ask. Yeah.
in the minority community, it's not always the way it's supposed to be. They say justice is blind, but in the black and brown community, it's like Lady Justice peeks under the blindfold sometimes before ruling, and that's the way it seems.
No,
and that's why it's really important to be able to ask those questions. But I try to do the best I can, at least to get people to know, you know, who you are and maybe, you know, help in their decision making process.
No, I really appreciate that, AJ. And one of the hardest things to do, especially during the primary, when I was going around trying to get the nomination with the various committees, was to even explain what happens in county court, because people don't understand that. They don't really know what the difference between county court and Supreme Court and family court is, because they don't have that interaction with the court system usually. So a lot of my time was just explaining what the county court did, and then trying to convince them that I was well qualified for that position given my years in the county court.
Right. If people, did I ask you about if people want to reach you? I didn't ask you that question.
No.
Okay, I did this 3 times today. This
No,
is the third
I
time.
understand. I was looking through the window while you were doing Gordon.
So I asked all candidates, because you can't get everything out in 30 minutes. Anybody listening wants to know more about you, maybe want to volunteer, want to read up on you, follow you on social media, website, social media information.
He's everywhere.
I am on Facebook under Robert Prisco Campaign. And if they want to reach me, they can use Prisco4county.com.
Okay. There you go. Anything I didn't ask you that you can talk about that you want the people to know? How about
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
How about that?
Because one of the other things that was frequently asked of me was, as a career prosecutor, could I be fair? Could I?
That is a very good question.
Right, and from your line of questioning, I said, you know what? This is what the listeners want to hear about.
I think in a full disclosure, we did for the first time actually do some endorsements for the primary, and I picked Melissa Lowe and another judge because you were more a career prosecutor, and a lot of times that doesn't go our way in the criminal justice. So it wasn't. I hadn't actually had a chance to talk to you and meet you, but I picked one of the other ones. But Lorraine was still here the whole time, telling everybody, supporting you all the way through, even though we had done somebody else. Yeah.
We argued over this right here and there.
So
right
who did
here
you
and
endorse, AJ?
Melissa and I really can't remember offhand.
Because
So
they're
many-
not. That
No,
person wasn't important.
No, not everybody's important. I just can't remember offhand. It was
Okay.
one of the other gentlemen, because actually
The
they
young
were on the
guy,
show.
the really nice guy. Did he come here?
I can't remember because both of the other ones came here. For some reason, we didn't get your camp in time before the primary. All the other three were here. I was trying to pick out which one of the two, and I did pick one of them.
Okay.
And I deal with all the candidates through Westchester, so I can't even remember
No,
the name.
I
But
appreciate that,
Melissa was my number one person. I was going with her no matter if I only went with her. That was who I was going
Okay.
with.
Yeah.
Well, so what would happen is someone would ask me the question and say, well, as a career prosecutor, can you promise to be fair to both parties, both sides, if they appear before you? And my answer was absolutely yes. With experience comes wisdom, and I have never been the type of person to believe that justice is only obtained through a conviction. We should be trying to obtain justice for everybody involved who appears in the court. And that includes the accused, it includes the victim of the crime. So for 20 some odd years, all I was handling were violent felony offenses where there were real victims. But I also understood that on the other side was the accused, who was also entitled to fairness, due process, and to make sure that that happened. And that was something that I always sought when I was prosecuting a case. And I think it's the reason that I have overwhelming support from the defense bar, because they knew when they had a case with me, I was going to be fair, open, and upfront with them, that I was not hiding anything. There was no agenda with me. I was looking to do what was right. And we would conference cases, and when I was the violent felony coordinator for the district attorney's office, I was personally reviewing over 800 violent felony cases a year. And I would conference hundreds of those cases with the defense bar, and we were usually able to reach a disposition that we all agreed was fair. And nobody leaves the criminal courthouse happy. The victims aren't happy because they've been victimized. The defendants aren't happy because they've been charged with a crime. But what we're aiming for is justice.
Now, I don't know if you can answer this question. As a career prosecutor, how did you feel about the criminal justice reforms, and one of them being discovery, which would have affected?
Yeah, well, I would say this. With respect to some of the reforms that have now taken place, I was on the committees where we discussed those reforms beforehand. One of those was Raise the Age. I was on the Raise the Age committee because I did believe that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds should not be treated as adults in an adult criminal court. And there's now a youth court that handles those cases.
If we had that law before, Corey, one of the Central Park Five, the only one that was 16, wouldn't have gone to Rikers and the adult jails and been abused the way he was, because they were kids. You know what I'm saying? And he just turned 16.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I just want to say that.
So I was on the Raise the Age committee. I was also on the Criminal Justice Advisory Board, where we would meet with the Department of Probation and defense attorneys and try to come to resolutions to make everything run more smoothly and more quickly. Delay is one of the worst things that can happen in a criminal case. It's not good for anybody involved in the criminal justice system. And the accused have a right to have their cases heard quickly and disposed of quickly, one way or another. So we came up with proposals for that. When Janet DeFiore was appointed to the Court of Appeals as the Chief Justice, I was on her Excellence Initiative, where again, I was the member of the DA's office who worked with defense attorneys to come up with proposals to make things run more quickly and more smoothly. I was also the mental health court coordinator for the office. My role there was to look at felony cases that were committed by people with mental health issues and handle those matters in mental health court. Because again, people who have drug dependencies and mental health issues, they shouldn't be in the regular court.
Right, absolutely.
There's
absolutely.
a mental health court?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I actually had a situation, has nothing to do with you, in Mount Vernon, where a lady went to my church. Her son is mentally has
mental health issues.
Have mental health issues, and he was in Valhalla, and I was able to navigate her through to getting him to Mid-Hudson or whatever, to get him out of Valhalla, because he didn't need to be in Valhalla per se, but he needed to be supervised,
Right.
but he needed to be, and they got him in Mid-Hudson. So.
Right. The county jail does have services, but not the type of services that other facilities have.
Right.
So with the mental health court, what we would do is we would make sure that they were being properly supervised, that they were receiving the treatment that they should receive. And a lot of cases involving mental health issues, they're also drug dependent because they either self-medicate or over-medicate.
Right.
So we also look to wean them off of that over-medication or self-medication. Because if you go to the root of the problem, if the root of the problem is mental illness, or the root of the problem is drug dependency, and those are the motivating factors why someone's committing a crime,
Right.
we'll solve those problems. You
Right.
solve those problems, they don't commit crimes. And then if you solve those problems after they've been charged with a crime, you won't have to worry about recidivism
cut down on
because
recidivism.
you've cured the initial problem that caused the crime in the first place.
I agree. Interesting question, has nothing to do with the
I
election.
swear, I was thinking the same thing, Gail.
But Gail asked the question, are you related to the Priscos that own appliance stores in Westchester?
No, I get asked that all of the time. All of the time. I know that Prisco Appliances is located in Mount Vernon, and
Greenberg.
And Greenberg too. And whenever I walk by those places, and Prisco Pools, I get asked about Prisco Pools also.
Okay.
No relation whatsoever. But I understand the people who work at the appliance store are very nice people, so I'm glad they have a good reputation. So maybe there are some voters out there who will vote for me because they got a good deal on a refrigerator.
Oh
or
my
something
God,
like
that's so
that.
funny.
And she then followed that up with, and how do you balance your religious convictions when deciding on a decision?
Okay. When you are reviewing the facts of a case, you have to rule with your head and not your heart. It's hard. It is hard sometimes because there are some really heartbreaking stories out there, particularly the victims of crimes often suffer greatly. I handled a number of homicide cases where I had to console families who lost loved ones to violence. And you just have to view the case as rationally as you can without letting your heart control, because you feel terribly for the victims in those cases. There are also other cases where people have been accused of crimes where they had terrible upbringings. They really had no chance. They had parents who were absent in their lives. They got involved with drug activity or gang activity, something along those lines, and you just try to do what you can to make it work as best as it can for all the parties involved. I was raised a Catholic. I went to Villanova University, a Catholic university. I am a believer, but when involved in the criminal justice system, you have to look at the facts and the circumstances of the case as level-headed as you can and not let your heart dictate your decisions.
So, again, not sure if you can answer it, but listening to what you just said, would you say you're the type of judge that looks at the whole picture as before, not just, because you're saying, like, if they had an upbringing and stuff, like, speak a little bit more on that. Like, we don't have enough judges that do that. If that's where you're going with that, that's what I want to hear more.
Well, I also think you mentioned before about the new discovery reforms.
Yes.
And I think those discovery reforms are being put in place to make sure that everyone has the full picture of the case before they make an important decision on it. I've always recognized that criminal convictions have lifelong consequences. If you get a criminal conviction, especially a felony conviction on your record, it could affect your finances in the future. It can affect your housing. It can affect whether you get a loan, a mortgage, whether you're able to complete school. There are a lot of consequences involved with a criminal conviction. It's unbelievably important for everyone to have a full picture of what is alleged before making a decision on that. The DA's office, before they come with an offer, they should have a full picture as to what the case is all about. Likewise, the defense attorney, before asking their client whether or not they want to plead guilty or go to trial, they should also have the full picture of what the case is about. And so that there's no pressure put on the accused to plead guilty when the case may not be what they believe it to be. And also with this new discovery process, I think the judge will also have a fuller picture as to what the case is all about. Now, unfortunately, judges learn about the case in the course of a conference which can be 5-10 minutes long. It's impossible for a judge to get the full picture of what a case is all about in that short time period. But with the new discovery process, where all of this material is being turned over earlier than it ever was before, I think everybody involved will have a better picture and a fuller picture as to what the case is all about and what the right disposition is to receive justice for all the parties involved.
I love that answer. I hope that you continue to feel that way, you know, in office if you're elected. I definitely support that. Coming to the close, I usually ask, I did with the other candidate too, breaking up the monotony, 2 non-political questions. If your house was on fire, you could only grab 3 things, what would they be?
My wife and my 2 boys.
Ah, good.
Sorry for the dog, but
Oh, it's a good thing. No pet?
I do, but he said 3. If he said 4, I would have taken the dog too. But he said,
If you were a superhero, who would you be?
I got to go with Iron Man.
Okay, and why?
He's just got so much, you know. It's not just he can fly. He's got all the gadgets. He's got it all. He's got it. The worst
His
one.
costume is really
the worst
nice.
one I thought was Aquaman because he's kind of limited to the water. But Iron Man, he can go anywhere.
Yeah, actually, that is great. Last
Did
thing,
you-
anything I didn't ask you? And last question, anything I didn't ask you that you want people to know?
Again, kind of where I started all of this, that when you're selecting someone for an important position as county court judge, because these are the judges who are going to be presiding over the cases that involve the most serious charges that we have in the criminal justice system, experience matters. I started in 1986 as a junior assistant ADA. When I left the office in February of this year, I was one of only 5 division chiefs within the whole office. In between, I was in the Career Criminal Bureau. I was the Deputy Chief of the Homicide Bureau. I was the Chief of the Major Case Bureau. I was the Deputy Chief of the entire Superior Court Trial Division.
Holy
and when I
tamale.
left, I was the Chief of the Grand Jury and Local Courts Division. I've devoted my entire life to public service. I love doing work that benefits the community. I've devoted my entire life to the criminal justice system and to criminal law, and I want to continue doing that from the bench because now I've reached that point in my career where I think I can make a more positive impact on the bench than in front of the bench.
I thank you for your time. I thank you for coming through. I wish you the best.
Thank you,
in the
AJ.
election. And it was great to finally meet you and interview. I learn about people when I do the interview. I get to know people. That's how I get to know people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully everybody else that needed to know you or had questions also got to know you, and they make an informed decision at the ballot box.
Thank you, AJ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Lorraine.
No, you're welcome. You know, my brother Hector from Aaliyah.